Evening, everyone. It says we are live on Facebook, so let's hope we are. I'm just going to double check, but good evening. Hope you've all had a good Monday. Yeah, I can see it there. Yeah, hope you've all had a good Monday. I'm just going to turn the volume down and then we don't get any feedback. As promised, Donna is here to answer your questions. So we've got quite a few questions. Donna's got a bit of a presentation to go through. So welcome, Donna. Thank you so much for jumping on. If you can just give my clients a little bit overview, who you are, what you do, who you coach, that will be great.
Yeah, so I've got a slide in the presentation, so I'll just crack straight into that. Can you see those slides? Is that all good?
I can, yes.
All good. Okay, so thanks for having me. First of all, hi everybody. So obviously this one is going to be about how to reduce emotional eating, which is something that loads of us struggle with. And we'll look at these 5 key areas, and there's loads of stuff that you can go into. But first of all, identifying emotional hunger. Then we're going to look at the wheel of emotions. Then we're going to look at the power of the pause, and then boredom eating. And I just want to talk as well around managing trigger foods. So a little bit about me. I am a personal trainer. I only qualified at 37 after procrastinating for many years and telling myself that I wasn't young enough, fit enough, whatever enough, and then decided to take the plunge, became a personal trainer, and then became an EIQ nutrition coach. And so EIQ very much base, you know, that the philosophy is very much not massively restricting, not, you know, encouraging people not to go on fad diets where they're eating next to nothing and then just going and binging loads of food, because of course you will. And, you know, focus on body image and just looking at someone holistically, not just one thing in isolation. So although I am a personal trainer, I would say that my coaching focuses a lot more on your behaviors with food and how you feel about your body. And that stemmed pretty much from an awful relationship that I used to have with food, with exercise and my body. I used to live in such a miserable cycle of trying to eat as little as possible. I used to have 1,200 calories a day because, you know, that was the golden number apparently. FYI, 1,200 is far too low for most people. So 1,200 calories. I used to go to the gym to burn another 500 calories. So yeah, pretty much was like living on 700 calories a day. My thoughts, like my mental energy, all went on how to lose weight. I used exercise as a form of punishment. I used to just go to burn food off or earn my food, and I hated my body. And so I know from personal experience that it doesn't really matter if you're a size 20 or a size 8, you can still hate your body just as much. And that fascinates me, the psychology of all that. So very much driven to help other women feel good and understand what good health really is, because it isn't just about calories. That's not the only part of good health. Okay. So we'll start off by, first of all, just identifying what emotional hunger is versus physical hunger. So if you are physically hungry, your hunger is going to come on gradually. You can wait if you need to. Lots of different foods sound good. You're not particular about what food it is that you want to eat. And you can take your time and, you know, you can enjoy the company that you're with. You tend to be able to stop eating when you're full, and then after eating, you don't feel bad. You've just eaten because you're hungry. Whereas emotional hunger, it's a feeling that comes on very suddenly, and it's like you must be satisfied instantly. You don't want to wait, and you crave very specific comfort foods. So if it's emotional hunger, fruit is not going to cut it. It has to be that comfort. You eat quickly, and it's usually in private. And so, you know, secret eating is a very, very common trait, whether because you're embarrassed to eat in front of people, or you know you're eating excessively, so you don't want any judgment or anyone to comment on that. And even when you're full, you're still not satisfied. You could still eat more. And then obviously afterwards, you have all these feelings of shame and guilt, and you just feel useless. You're annoyed with yourself, and it's not a great feeling. So if it is physical, make sure you're eating enough in your meals for a start. If you're someone who tries to kind of wait until the end of the day and save up all your calories, and then you end up actually eating a lot more, then definitely make sure that you're eating at regular intervals. Make sure you're eating foods that are high volume and high protein. So all your meats, your fish, your tofu, and all your high volume foods, which are your vegetables. Pack your plate full of them. And make sure that you've got nutritious snacks at the ready. So don't be underprepared. Make sure that you have got things in the fridge that you can have, or the cupboards. But if it is emotional, then this is a really, really useful tool that you can use, and it's called the wheel of emotions. So quite often when we are emotionally eating, it's quite a mindless, automatic thing. And we need to bring the awareness to what is actually happening. So if you've done that little, is this physical or emotional hunger coming on? If you identify that it feels emotional, then you can have a quick look at this wheel of emotions, and you can get these, just Google wheel of emotions, there's loads of different ones. And it just kind of brings awareness to what is it that you're feeling right now? Because most of us will be like, well, I'm sad, or I'm stressed, or I'm frustrated. But there might be other ones going on, like, do you feel rejected? Do you feel helpless? Do you feel insecure? Do you feel energetic? Do you feel proud? Like, there's so many different emotions out there. So try and broaden your awareness of what emotion it might be. It might be something that you haven't really thought about before. But what you can do is the power of the pause. So when you make a decision with anything, so okay, I've identified that it's emotional hunger versus physical. So it's emotional, I know that. Okay, so now what do I do? This is when you pause. And there is so much power in just taking a breath, bringing the awareness, and really thinking about what you're considering. So when you stop, when you take a minute, you've given yourself a space to make a different choice. Whereas if you're just going automatic, you're just doing the same old thing that you always do, you're not giving yourself a chance to break that circuit. So a pause is very powerful, and it gives you space to make a different choice. So you go back so you take your pause, you go to the wheel of emotions, you identify and name what the emotion is that you're feeling, and try and get as specific as possible. So like, notice the sensations in your body, like whereabouts are you feeling it? Is it anxiety? Is it like a knot in your stomach? Is it that you feel, your shoulders are tight because you're stressed? Like, is it a familiar sensation? Is it a new sensation? A certain area is tense or relaxed? Like, try and feel it, and then try and understand where the emotion stems from. You could say like, oh, I've just had a stressful day at work, and yeah, it might be as simple as that, but there might be something else going on. So is it stemming from something in particular? Is, oh, I've had a bad day at work, when is actually what happened that you felt quite rejected by a colleague because they answered you in a certain way, or you gave them a suggestion and they dismissed it. So actually you feel rejected. And so what does that do to you when you feel rejected? Is that what's causing the emotional eating? And then can you work on what you do instead when you feel rejected? It's also really important to try and identify when you usually feel the urge. So if it's like always in the evening after dinner, and that's when you usually do it, have a rethink about whether you're eating your meals at the right time. Because if actually you're having a light breakfast, a light lunch, maybe one snack, by the time you get to dinner, you might eat your dinner, but then be really unsatisfied by it. And that's when you might, so it might not be emotionally eating. It might just be you need to look at the ways in which you're constructing your food intake through the day. But it might absolutely be emotional eating. It might be that it's when you walk in the door, and maybe you live alone. So you walk through the door and you feel lonely. And so that's when you're more likely to emotionally eat. So trying to understand when you do it, whether you're on your own, whether you're around people, that will also help you just bring that awareness to what you're doing. And then how do you feel after? I mean, chances are you probably don't feel great. See, I'm assuming that everybody would have a fat loss goal, but some people don't have a fat loss goal. But if you do, then chances are if you've just eaten a load of high calorie food, you're probably going to feel quite bad about yourself. But also consider but do I feel relieved? Like, do I get some kind of relief from that food? You know, doesn't all have to be guilt and shame and embarrassment. It can be, well, actually, I felt better temporarily. Actually, I felt a bit of relief. So how do you feel afterwards? And then this is where you can take action. So what one action can you take to meet that need rather than eating? So you've taken your breath, you've identified the emotion, and even by identifying it and saying it out loud or writing it down helps it kind of release some of the power over you. So you've got to feel where it is in your body, you know where it's stemming from, you kind of know why, you know, where you're doing it in the day, you know how you feel afterwards. What can you do instead to meet that need, to meet that feeling? You create your toolkit. So actions that you can take in the moment, rather than opting for food, rather than just doing what you usually do, are things like this: breath work. Now, there's loads and loads of different types of breath work, but the simplest one and a really effective one is just to breathe in for the count of 4, hold for the count of 4, breathe out for the count of 4, and hold. So you're just basically like drawing a box. So in, hold, out, hold. That's used by the military. That's like a really well-known breath work style, and it instantly will make you feel calmer, so that if the feelings that you're feeling are anxiety, nervousness, stress, that will help you come into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your calm system, and that's really where we want to stay most of the time. Another thing that you can do is write it down. Journaling is so effective for pretty much everything. If you, rather than going to the kitchen, if you are fiercely compassionate with yourself and you say, no, I'm not doing that, I'm going to sit down with a pen and paper and I'm going to write down what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling anxious. Why am I feeling anxious? Because I've got that thing tomorrow at work and I'm really nervous about it. Okay, what's the worst case scenario? Well, that I mess it up, da, 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 da. Can I cope with that? Yes, yeah, I could probably cope with that. Is there anything that you can do tonight to help you feel better about that? I suppose I could go over my notes one last time. So journaling is just, it just brings everything right to the front, right to the focus. Because when we emotionally eat, most of the time it's all like just a jumble of feelings, negative feelings that don't make us feel very good in our heads or in our body somewhere. And just putting it in black and white helps us to see that we're not actually looking at this in the best way. And yeah, I could do X, Y, or Z to make me feel a bit better about it. So I can't stress enough how writing things down. And also when you write things down, it's very personal. You don't have to, there's no judgment there because no one has to read it. It's personal to you. So I think whereas some people might not be very comfortable voicing their feelings, expressing their emotions, maybe because they've been taught that they should just push them down, suppress them, and just get on with life. Writing it down can be a very cathartic thing to do. Meditation. Again, it's going to bring you back into that calm state. It's an 18-minute meditation that I absolutely love, and it's just like a relaxing one. But there are loads and loads of guided meditations from 5 minutes to like however long. And that is so good just for like shifting your state. So when you're feeling that urge to emotionally eat, you want to trip the switch, you want to interrupt the pattern. And so if you can shift your state even slightly, then that's what you want to do. So a meditation is just like so easy, literally on YouTube, like, right, I need a meditation, or have one ready that you already use, whack your headphones in, lay down, and in 5 minutes, that can make like the difference between you then going ahead and eating or not. Dancing it out, my favorite. Quite often I will be like, yeah, I can have the chocolate, but I'm going to have a bit of a dance around my room like an idiot and laugh at myself, and I'm going to see if that shifts my state. And if I have the chocolate afterwards, fine, well, at least I've done some movement and then eaten, so that's a positive. And again, exercise, similar thing. But I think it's about doing things like right in that moment and like having things ready. Because if you're like, oh, well, I know exercise really helps when I'm going to emotionally eat, but oh, it means like getting changed into my stuff, and then I'll have to go and get my weights from wherever, and you're just putting obstacles like in the way. It's going to be too difficult. You need things where that emotion is rising, and all you want to do is eat, and you need something really quick. Breath work, you could literally just stand there, close your eyes, and just do it right then and there. And the other things are things that should be kind of ready. I actually will come on to that in a sec. And the last one that people might not be comfortable to do is talking it out. Now, what we are not good at doing as humans is expressing ourselves. I'm very expressive, and I know people that are, but most people find it really awkward and uncomfortable to just say how they feel. You know, I'm really worried about X, or I feel really lonely. Like, I come home at night and I feel really lonely in my flat, and I'm embarrassed because I don't really want to reach out to any of my friends because they're all busy, and I hate it. You know, so saying things like that to a friend can be really uncomfortable, and I definitely recommend that people do it, but I totally understand that that might be a bit of a stretch too far. So if you have a really trusted confidant, and you've started to identify these feelings that you're feeling and where it stems from, I'm sure they would be happy to have a listen to you. And if you wanted to talk it out with someone as opposed to write it down yourself, then please do that, because the more we can offload, the more we can voice how we're feeling and express it, the less we're going to try and keep it in and use food as our coping mechanism. So like I said at the end there, the most important thing you can do is tackle the root cause. So these are all things that you do in the moment, all good, but really you want to be tackling the root. So what is it? Why do you keep emotionally eating? And if you start kind of noting things down, then hopefully you should start to see your patterns. For a lot of people, it will be stress. And so the number one thing you can do, obviously, is reduce your stress levels. So rather than just sitting there and thinking, oh, I really want to emotionally eat, I just mustn't. That's like you're not doing yourself a favor, because then you're just relying on, well, you're just relying on you sitting there and trying your very best to not grab the chocolate. And that's hard to do. Whereas if you're tackling things at a root level, like, why is it that you're stressed? Is it because you've got a job that's just a nightmare? Is it because you don't get any support from your partner and you're trying to juggle 100 things in the household? Is it because there's a colleague at work that you really don't get on with and it just stresses you out to have to deal with them? Like, what is it? Why are you so stressed? And for a lot of us, it's just purely we just take too much on. We've got too much going on in our lives, and we need to prioritize a little bit better. And I know that sounds difficult, and obviously we're not here to talk about time management, but if there is any way that you can reduce your stress levels, then look at that, rather than just, oh, I must stop emotionally eating. Like, remove the cause of what's actually doing it. Spend less time with negative people. If you are getting stressed, or you're sad, or you know, you're around people that aren't really feeding you the energy that you need, is there something you can do there? Can you spend more time with certain people and less time with others? If it's loneliness, then how can you connect more? And I don't just mean, because, you know, from personal experience, like when I lived in London, you can be surrounded by thousands of people and still be lonely. You can have loads of friends and still be lonely. It's a very personal thing, feeling loneliness. And so if you feel quite isolated and lonely, whether it's physically because you don't have people around, or because in your head you feel lonely, like, how can you connect more with people? So one of the ladies that I coach, you know, she was saying, I just feel quite lonely. And I think, you know, if you're at a certain age and a lot of your friends have partners and children and you don't, then you can feel quite lonely, but also you don't want to reach out and ask for more time. But I encouraged her to do that. And so quite simply, you know, one of her friends, they're going to do a FaceTime once every couple of weeks. And so even something like that, you're just increasing the connection. But you can increase connection in lots of different ways. So obviously you can reach out to your friends more. You could join new groups. You could volunteer. There are things that you can do to connect with people more, but you can also do it just in like micro areas. So whether it's just saying hello to more people in the street, or helping someone with their shopping, or, you know, when at the supermarket, if you're the cashier, rather than keeping your headphones in, like have a chat with them. Like just little things like that. If you can bring more connection into your life, then all good. If of course your issue isn't loneliness, then I would always encourage more connection anyway, but you know, maybe that's not what you need to address. A big one is ask for more support. So like I said, whether it's that you're not really getting support from a partner at home, whether it's that you're not getting support from your friends with things, if you are trying to you know, go through a fat loss journey, that can be really challenging at times. And so even to have someone that you know you can call and just be like, oh God, I'm really struggling at the moment, or I'm feeling really rubbish about myself, you know, ask for that support. And especially like with your partner as well, if you know, if you just need a bit more support in terms of like, can we not get 5 takeaways this week, like can you just try and support me a little bit more in that. Changing your environment is a huge one, and I think it's often the difference between people succeeding and not succeeding in their sort of fat loss efforts, or if it's that they want to build muscle. So change your environment to suit you better. So again, I know this is a very simplistic view, but if it's your job that is affecting you, is there any way you could start the process to look for a new job? Is it that your home environment is really not serving you? What can you do at home to change that? So rather than just feeling stressed or down or overwhelmed all the time, you're actually looking at how you can change things. Doing like a little audit of like a life audit of where all your time goes is really useful. You might sort of say, well, I know where all my time goes. It goes on my kids, or it goes to my job. Okay, but to literally list things out and show where your time goes, you might be able to see if there are like some little wins that you could have and some little changes that you could make. But I think a big one with emotional eating is low self-esteem and lack of confidence. So people maybe don't quite believe that they can achieve their goals, or they come from a background of never feeling like they're quite good enough. They always put everyone else first, and they just don't feel that good about themselves. And that will definitely lead you to using food as a coping mechanism. So maybe you could try a new approach to dieting. So if it's not working for you now and you're really struggling with your food intake, like, is there a new approach that you could take? And then lastly, I would just maybe try and educate yourself on eating behaviors. So when I hear people say things like, oh, I'm so stupid, like, why do I do that? It's like, if you are sabotaging your efforts, if you are overeating on higher calorie foods, explore why. There's a cause, there's a reason. And there's nothing wrong with you, and it's not silly, and it's not stupid, and you're not an idiot. And this is like, I hear this over and over again, and people use such negative language towards themselves. And you need to observe without the judgment. So you need to be like, why am I doing that? Like, where's that coming from? And why am I doing that? Because it's not stupid. It comes from somewhere. And it's either, it could be, you know, you're just simply trying to be too restrictive, and then you're overeating on foods that you like because they taste nice. And it's just all very normal human behavior, and yet we really criticize ourselves for it. So just kind of looking into eating behaviors and patterns is really useful as well. Okay, so let's go on to boredom eating. Victoria, if there are any questions or anything in the chat, just let me know, just interrupt if you need to.
Yeah, I will do. Nothing at the minute.
So boredom eating. So you have emotional eating. I always separate out boredom eating a little bit, because I think this is a huge one. And again, this is just such a mindless habit. It's like, well, I've not got much to do, or I've finished work, like, what next? I'll go and get some food. And the best thing that you can do is, again, to create a toolkit, but try and make the activities immersive. So whereas with emotional eating, you want something to like bring you, like change your state and bring you into that calm, boredom eating, I think, is more like get into the flow of certain activities. So immersive activities are activities that require your full concentration. So you kind of switch off from everything and the mind chatter in favor of doing these things. And then you get into like that nice flow state where you're not even really thinking, you're just being. So my favorite is doing jigsaw puzzles, embroidery, crocheting, knitting, going for a walk, reading, gardening. My favorite one is colouring. So I've got those like intricate colouring books with the really fine little felt tips. And you know, whenever I'm feeling like, should I go eat some food? It's like, well, why don't I do some colouring instead? And it's just such a nice activity. And, you know, 20 minutes later, and it's like, oh, I feel all chill now. But something that is a really useful thing to do is to set a 10-minute timer. So when you feel the urge to overeat, and, you know, this is just boredom, we're not talking about like the emotional stuff, but you can use this for that as well. You can set a 10-minute timer, choose from your toolkit, and do something different to eating. And the more you do that, the more natural it's going to become. So rather than just reaching for the food every time, you're going to start thinking, let's just do that instead. Now, what your toolkit looks like is going to be different for everybody. You know, someone might be like, hate jigsaw puzzles. Like, find whatever it is that you quite enjoy doing and that requires quite a lot of focus. And something that I like doing is when I come home from work and just start chopping up the vegetables for dinner. And I know some people are probably like, oh, can't stand chopping veg and whatever to make dinner. But I just find it really therapeutic. And I guess it's because it takes focus, so you don't cut yourself, and you just switch off from everything. And so find those activities. So, and this is where you've got to be a little bit more fierce with yourself and be like, I'm not going to go and do it again and again, because that's not what I want to do. I'm going to pick something different from the list. And I'm going to go and set my 10-minute timer, and I'm going to do the stuff. And then if I want to eat afterwards, then okay, but at least I would have done something productive. Another one I like doing is like get a drawer out and just start clearing through a drawer. So you kind of like win-win, getting rid of stuff. So if it isn't just a, right, I'm bored, I want to eat, right, let me do something from my toolkit, that's fine. But if your issue is always snacking when you're watching television, so it's just something that you always do, you go and get the popcorn, you go get the chocolate, and then you sit and watch your favorite program, then practice changing it up. So things that you can try, so rather than just sitting and eating mindlessly, try having half or 3/4 of what you would usually eat and save the rest for the next day, because you can have it the next day. You don't have to eat it all now. Try and focus a little bit more on the food and really enjoying the flavors, and trying to stop when you're satisfied, rather than just like having the whole massive like bag of popcorn. Like, check in with yourself, and if after 3/4 you're thinking, yeah, I've kind of had enough, then these things do take time. They take practice, because you're probably entrenched in these behaviors for a long time. So you can't just expect yourself to change like that, but you can practice. So you might say, all right, well, when I'm watching my film or my Netflix, whatever, on Mondays and Wednesdays, I'll allow myself the chocolate, the ice cream, whatever it is that you like. But on the alternate days, I'm gonna go for the more nutritious ones. And again, before you go and give in to that boredom eating, consider these questions. Why do you want to avoid overeating? How will it make you feel? Will it make you feel better or worse? And sometimes even just asking yourself those questions, again, is that trip of like the interrupting the circuit and trying to do something different. Before I move on to trigger foods, I just want to, so, you know, those slides have been sort of mostly about how you can combat things, like things you can do in the moment to stop yourself from emotionally eating, and understanding like what emotion it is you're feeling. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that using food as a coping mechanism is so normal. And like, if you, like, through the years, if you look at what people generally use, the majority use food as a coping tool. And emotional eating in itself, there's nothing like majorly wrong with it. Everybody does it. We all overeat. And when we've had a stressful day or we've broken up with a partner, you know, it's okay to reach for the ice cream. The problem is when it becomes consistent and it makes you feel awful all the time. because then you're in this horrible loop of feeling bad, doing it again, feeling bad and doing it again. But please be aware that it is such a normal coping mechanism that people use. But if it's your only one, then you need to start looking at other coping mechanisms. So what does that look like for you? And that's going to be different for everyone. So exercise might be a different coping mechanism. Meditation might be a different coping mechanism. But you need to find what it is that works for you, that takes you out of that state and makes you feel better. But if the goal is to eliminate emotional eating altogether, I think you're probably going to struggle, because I think it's part of what we do as humans. You know, we feel bad, we reach for food, it makes us feel good in the moment. It's a very normal thing to do. And what we need to get better at is finding those different mechanisms and being firmer with ourselves and taking those other options, so that next time we say, oh God, I feel so stressed, our automatic thought is to go for a walk as opposed to go and eat the chocolate. And it's just a case of changing our behavior and doing that over time, and not expecting to just like do it overnight. I think a lot of people as well, like if you, as I touched on before, we're not encouraged to express our emotions. And if you look at sort of food in itself, there's no judgment from food. We can do it in private. It's a very personal thing. I know that, you know, I used to have a terrible, oh God, an awful relationship with food. And I'd take my food up to my room and yeah, and I'd eat in secret. And it was like, I don't know, it sounds a bit cheesy, I suppose, but food was, it didn't let me down. It was always there, it was always available, and it made me feel better in that moment. And so there's no wonder that we go back to these things. You know, it makes sense. So just don't criticize yourself heavily if you do. So this isn't quite emotional eating, but I just wanted to touch on it, because I think sometimes we okay, we want fat loss, we try not to eat chocolate, and then we give in and we eat chocolate, and then we feel really bad because that's not what we should be doing. So then we scoff more, and then we feel even worse. And I think that, like, we think that is emotional eating, which it is to a degree, but it's not been triggered by an emotion. It's been triggered by the fact that we've given in, and that's what we're annoyed about. So if you have certain trigger foods that you're trying to avoid, my advice would be the answer isn't to like get rid of them, keep them out of the house. So I hear it time and time again when people say, oh, I'm going to go on a diet, and it's like, right, I've eaten all the last of the chocolate, or I had the last takeaway, and now it's clean eating all the way. And all that happens then is you become fearful of having that food. So instead, try this, like still have those foods in the house, but maybe get a reduced amount of it. Give yourself permission to have some every day if you like. Being on a diet doesn't need to mean you've got to cut things out. Like whenever I take on a new client and we speak initially, some people have such strict food rules. So it's like, well, I'm not allowed chocolate, I'm not allowed this. And they genuinely don't think that they can eat certain things whilst they're on a diet, which is false. You can eat everything you want to eat, but obviously there has to be moderation to it. So you probably have to reduce the amount that you're eating. But if you give yourself that permission, and I speak to people and they're like, but it's so uncomfortable. It's like, I'm on a diet, I shouldn't be eating this stuff. And it's like, you really have to untangle and undo those beliefs. Because if you try and cut things out, what's going to happen? You're just going to think about it more and more and more. Then you're probably going to give in. And if you do have just a little bit, then you're like, I've ruined it. And that's when you eat more and more. But actually, if you just say, no, it's within my plan that I have some every day, then it takes out the guilt around it. But a good idea is to try and have that food, not at a time that you're really hungry or really stressed, because you're obviously a lot more likely to overeat on them. So really enjoy the food, taste the flavor and be mindful. So don't sit there thinking, oh, I shouldn't be eating this, because that's pointless. Really enjoy it and be satisfied and then move on. So if you can try and take the guilt out of food, then, and all this, like, I shouldn't be doing this and that's a bad food, then it's going to really help you. So try to zone in on that point that you are quite satisfied. Like, do I actually need, when I you know, let's be honest, when we get like crisps, popcorn, chocolate, probably get a bigger bar because it's more economical. And so then the challenge is not having the whole thing. So you need to practice, like, where am I satisfied? Because if you're having a big block of chocolate, the satisfaction you're getting from those first few squares is probably not the same as, you probably get to a point where you say, oh, I might as well eat the rest now. And it's getting better at saying, well, actually, I've had enough now. I'm going to put that back. I can have that tomorrow. And it's getting better at that kind of thing. And then by allowing yourself food that you want, hopefully the guilt is removed. But again, this is a practice. This isn't like, these are your food behaviors. So all foods can be enjoyed as part of a balanced diet. They're not good or bad. They're just neutral, but it can take some time to kind of untangle that.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, like I always say to all my clients, I eat chocolate, biscuits every single day. And it's so much better when you factor like a small amount in. And yes, you know, you might have to try and reduce it down over time. And, you know, I used to be one of those, like, come home from a busy day at work and just stand at the cupboard and eat all the chocolate and everything, trying to get satiated. And it never satiates you. And I used to write my feelings down of how I felt after eating a big bar of chocolate or like half a finger cookies or whatever. And you never felt better. And one never tasted any different than 5 did, you know. And like you say, it's just obviously recognizing those kind of things. And I say to all clients, you know, I'd rather that you had a little bit every day than when clients come and go, oh, I'm not going to eat chocolate now, I'm not going to have it. And like you say, restricting is like the worst thing you can do. And I was always advocate, whatever people are craving or they enjoy, if you have it in every day, it then doesn't become this shiny object that you want at the end of the week or at the end of the month, or, you know, when you're stressed or tired. If you have a cookie every single day, when you're stressed, you're then less likely to go and reach for a cookie because it's lost its value, it's lost its shininess. So yeah, so that definitely I resonate with, and, you know, I tell clients to do that all the time.
Yeah, I eat chocolate every day, so I like chocolate. But I tell you what, there's something really satisfying about eating without guilt, because you've had a good day and you're not doing it because you feel like crap. You're doing it because you're like, oh, I'm going to have some chocolate now and I'm going to really enjoy it. And you really do, you enjoy it. There's no guilt attached to it. And then afterwards, you don't feel this urge to like, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I might as well just go and eat a ton of other things now because, you know, I've screwed it all up.
Yeah, I mean, we're all like people and we're all human, no matter what knowledge we've got. And, you know, I'm the same as you. I can just break 3-4 pieces of chocolate off a bar, a couple of biscuits, and then I'm done. Sometimes I might go, oh, I might just have a little bit more, but it's never what I used to eat or, you know, the volume I used to eat. I can now feel satisfied with just like 2 or 3 squares of chocolate. And a lot of people might think, oh, I don't get how you do that. And for me personally, it was just reducing it down over time. You know, like you say, I could probably, after a breakup about 8 years ago, I just used to sit there with a massive bar of dairy milk and just eat the whole thing. And then maybe some pick and mix on the side as well, you know, not even blinking an eyelid. And so it's taken me a long time, obviously, to get to this point. But like you say, it's just working on that every day and sitting with those feelings. And I said to clients before, like, I write down a lot of the time how I'm feeling. When I went on holiday, like how I was feeling in a bikini, so that when I got back, I could then successfully diet with those feelings written down of how I didn't want to be. And the same with food, you know, I wrote down how I felt, like I said, after I ate a load of cookies or, you know, a load of chocolates at work that were just out on the side, like, and you don't get that satisfaction, and you get the same satisfaction from 1 or 2 that you do from 10, because you kind of dumb that dopamine response. The more and more you kind of hit those foods, and then you need more and more to get that dopamine response. So yeah, so definitely like reducing it over time is something that massively helped for me.
Yeah, it's just a practice. And some nights I'll have, you know, and I used to think, it used to really wind me up when people said that, oh, I just have 2 squares and I'm done. I used to think, how? Like, if I have a whole bar of chocolate in front of me, the whole thing is getting eaten. And trust me, sometimes I do eat the whole thing, but I don't panic, because it's like, if I do that, it's all right. Like, there's nothing to panic about. But if I do that every single night, then chances are I'm going to gain weight and probably won't feel that great. So if I do that on occasion, that's fine. And then if other times I have half, sometimes I have 2, sometimes I don't even have, like, it's nice when you're like, the automatic response is like, right, I'm going to go and get some chocolate. And then you're like, actually, I don't know if I fancy it. I don't know if I actually want it, because you're so used to just thinking, well, of course I want it because I always want the chocolate. And it's just getting in touch with those like internal cues a little bit more and just being like, maybe I don't actually.
Yeah, definitely.
Really nice
I don't have chocolate every day now. Biscuits I'll have every day. I'll hold my hand up and say I have biscuits every day. That's more my weakness. But chocolate used to be, but again, it's just that mindful eating and that portion control and giving it yourself if you want it, and then knowing that you don't have to actually have it if you're not feeling it that day.
There's a big difference between depriving yourself and making an empowered choice in line with your goals. So if you're like, I'm going to actually stop at I'm going to have some ice cream, but I'm going to stop here because I can eat more if I want, but I'm choosing not to, because actually I'm trying to aim for fat loss at the moment. So I'm gonna make a choice out of like self-respect and self-care, and I'm going to do the right thing for myself. And that feels a lot nicer than, I'm not allowed anymore because I'm on this diet and I can't do it.
I always say, like, is the action or the decision you're making going to take you one step closer to your goals, or is it going to take you one step further away? Like, neither are bad. If you want that dessert at a restaurant, it's probably going to take you an extra day for fat loss, but if you want to do that and you want to enjoy that, that's great. Just understand that's your decision that you have made. Again, if you say, actually, I'm not going to have that dessert at the restaurant, you're probably going to get one step closer to your goals, and that's how you've kind of got to view things. Like, there's no good or bad foods, no good or bad decisions. It's just, what is that action then gonna cause for your goals? And if it's a positive one, great. And like you say, we've got to make the uncomfortable decisions sometimes and cut ourselves off from things, because we do have goals. Otherwise, if we said yes to everything that we wanted and ate everything, then we wouldn't be where we want to get to. So there's got to be some kind of restriction, I guess, in a sense, to be able to then get to your goals. As no has to be part of your vocabulary.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, because I think, like, sometimes if I coach people, they might start off with like, fat loss is my goal, fat loss is my goal, and that's fine, but along the way they will start to question that and be like, maybe I don't want fat loss quite as badly as I thought I did. Because actually, a really important question to ask yourself is like, what are you willing to do? And if the answer is, I'm not willing to sacrifice reducing my chocolate consumption, I'm not willing to reduce the bottle of wine that I have every other night, then again, there's nothing wrong with that, but just make that choice. Like, that's your choice. And if you own it, again, that's very empowering. I used to, we all have our kind of areas of our body that we dislike, I suppose, and I always hated my stomach, because even when I was really lean, I just always kind of had this little hot belly, and so I just carried weight around my tummy, and I used to absolutely hate it. And now I'm like, I don't think like that at all, but every now and again, those old thoughts can creep in, and I can feel like, oh, maybe I should lose a bit of weight, maybe I should like try and reduce my belly a little bit. And then very quickly I'm like, are you willing to reduce chocolate and reduce wine at the weekends? And the answer is no, because I enjoy those things. So actually, no, I'm not willing to. So then I can either choose to be constantly disappointed with myself and keep trying to do something that I know deep down I'm not willing to do, so therefore I'm always going to feel bad about myself. Or I can just say, let's just be honest with myself, I'm not actually willing to do that. I enjoy my life, I enjoy my lifestyle, so I have to accept myself as I am, otherwise I'm just going to feel like crap all the time. And it's really empowering. You're just like, yeah, okay, that's my choice I've made. Like, that's, and I'm not saying that body image is a whole other topic, but it's about choices, and there are no good and bad, like you said. It is just like, your goals are your goals, you know what they are. And also, like, what's your timeline? Like, why is there all this urgency? Oh, I've got to lose fat like immediately. Why? Like, if it is going to take you, like you say, if you're going to choose the dessert, but it's going to add on a couple of days to your fat loss, if you enjoy the dessert, then does it really matter that much that you've pushed your fat loss back a couple of days? Like, there doesn't need to be this timeline on it. Anyway,
Just had a quick question, actually. So someone said they've never managed to do this with chocolate. So obviously, I guess reducing it down over time. How long practicing this till it clicks in your brain? So I think for me personally, it was probably about a year, like easily. Like I wasn't a coach at the time. I was doing it obviously myself, but you know, it was definitely a long time. It wasn't just overnight, all of a sudden I went from a bar of chocolate to 2 squares. Like it just wasn't.
It's like, how long is a piece of string? It's, for some people it might be more around just lack of awareness, it might be around boredom, and so in that case you might just need to embed some better habits and it might not be that much of a challenge. If you have used chocolate as your coping mechanism for 20 years, then it's going to take longer than that. And so I think you have to be kind to yourself and not expect too much. And you have to try something a bit different, because I'm working with someone at the moment to reduce their chocolate consumption. And like I said, to start off with, it's so alien, even though, like, the bizarre thing is, by not allowing yourself the chocolate, saying that you're not allowed, but then overeating like 5 bars over the weekend because you've just given in and you've binged, like, to have half a block. So, you know, if you're buying a share bar, to have half of a block every other day. So even if she'd had a full block on Monday, half a block Tuesday, a full block on Wednesday, overall, she's saved half of her calories in chocolate every other day, and that is progress. So I think this is the problem. We expect far too much from ourselves too quickly, because actually, even if you had like a share bar of chocolate Monday to Friday every single day, and then you stop doing it on Sunday, that's progress. Like, you've stopped overeating on a day, and then you can start to integrate it into the other days as well.
Yeah, and I think people like to go from 0 to 100, and I
absolutely,
when a new client comes on board, they want to do everything, and I say no, we're going from 0 to 1. Like, we can try and implement a few things, but we don't want to do absolutely everything. And it's the same with dieting. Like, I will always talk about a pre-diet diet. So that just means that I will spend a week, maybe 2. I've realized I want to diet, I want to cut down a little bit. I'll get rid of all the delicious food that is way over a calorie consumption that I would need to have in, like cake or whatever, and, you know, reduce it down in my house. So I'm not going to throw food away, but I'm going to slowly like integrate it out of my cupboards, you know, and then I'll start getting more veg in, make sure I've got enough protein, you know, really looking at portion sizes and controlling that. And I might do that for a week or 2 weeks before I diet. So even me, I will never go from all-inclusive, eating everything, whatever I want, to going, oh, do you know what? I need to diet, straight into a diet the next day, because that is too harsh. For me personally, coming from a size 18 mentality, still in my brain that I'm a size 18, I can eat that much food. So it's very hard for me to go from a normal everyday diet to going, oh, actually, I want to cut my calories a little bit. I will spend a week at least just reducing things down, making sure, like you said, the environment is optimal. You know, yes, I will have chocolate and biscuits in. I've got cake in now, but it's in the freezer. So I've got to consciously go and get a slice out of the freezer. So it's about setting your environment up and not going from 0 to 100, and just making those small little changes. Like you say, if you have a full chocolate bar every single day, then maybe, like you say, rather than getting rid of one day, maybe having half on a day or 2 halves on 2 different days. You know, and like you say, that's a massive win. And I think we never give ourselves enough credit for the little tiny small steps, when we should really, we think that we have to go to nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with this particular girl, because she can't see when she's made progress, so she needs evidence. So I'm like, I want you to literally write down, like Monday to Friday, Monday to Sunday, what did you do? Like, how much chocolate did you eat? And then you can compare it week on week, and then you can actually see whether you're making progress. Because naturally, if we're still if we're still eating high calorie foods, that's wrong, that's bad. And so even if we've reduced the amount, people still think, yeah, but I'm still eating too much chocolate, I'm still eating too much this, too much that. And so they're still being very self-critical. But in answer to that question, I would say, yeah, one, like, there's no kind of set period, but I would say that you're probably not doing all the things that you could be doing. So to be a bit kind of fiercely compassionate about it, when you're sitting down to eat that chocolate, when, you know, are you checking in with yourself every time and saying, when am I satisfied? And if you're sitting there saying, I don't seem to be able to stop, get a pen and paper, like, right, why don't I feel like I can stop eating this chocolate? Like, what is it giving me? Well, it feels really good to be eating the chocolate. Okay, is there something else that might make me feel good? Is there something else that I can explore here? Or like, why do I feel like I need to rely on that chocolate so much? So I think it's, sometimes we kind of like, you know, you might listen to something like this and then kind of go, right, okay, there's a couple of things that I could probably implement here, and then we potentially don't, or we start doing it and then we kind of stop. And if we want to change behaviors and we want to change habits, we've kind of got to do a little bit of work. It doesn't just come to us. And so, you know, that's the bad news, I guess, that you've kind of got to do something. But even if it's that it's like, right, and I like to kind of, I say to people, like, look at it as an experiment, like, or a little project. So it's like, right, okay, I'm gonna do this like little project me, whatever, project chocolate, and I'm gonna monitor it, and I'm gonna sit down, and every time I feel like I want to really overeat on it, explore what's going on. And if you don't do that consistently, then you're not really doing what is needed to move forward. And so if you kind of like, oh well, I wrote something down on Monday, but I haven't, that was 2 weeks ago, I haven't really done it since, then you probably could be doing a little bit more to try and change that behavior. So I think sometimes we do actually have to put in the work.
Yeah, great answer, thank you.
Okay, so last slide. So finding the middle ground is, like, for me, this is the ultimate, like, if you can come away from an all or nothing mentality, if you can find that middle ground, this is where you can still lose fat and enjoy your life. So you don't have to abstain from alcohol, you don't have to cut all your chocolate out, you don't have to do 5, go from 0 to 5 workouts a week. If you can find that middle ground, you can go out for a burger and chips, but you don't have to eat all of the chips. It's finding that middle ground. Being strict and restrictive, it scuppers success. Taking the imperfect action, so it doesn't have to be clean and green all the time. Take the action, even if it's imperfect, because if you're having chocolate but you are having less, then that's an imperfect action. Well, you're still eating chocolate, so technically, if you want fat loss as soon as possible, yeah, you should be cutting out all the chocolate, but that's not what is going to create long-term success. So be a bit imperfect about everything. You haven't ruined things when you take the middle ground. And just a reminder that all foods can be eaten as part of a balanced diet. So these were the questions that were brought up. So I will so the last one, more awareness of when I'm about to emotionally eat. Just check in with whether it's physical or emotional hunger. Get used to recognizing the traits of the characteristics, of an emotional eating episode. So that's probably what I'd say there. The next one up, why is it that in those moments of changed emotions, it's always unhealthy foods you want, like chocolate, crisps and cake? 100% a piece of fruit just doesn't cut it. You mentioned dopamine earlier, Victoria. When we eat these high calorie foods, we do get a release of dopamine. And so it does chemically make us feel good. So it's not in our heads. It's not like, I just think it makes me feel better. It does make you feel better. And so that's why we do it. Sorry, you just took yourself off mute there. I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, no.
So the next one up, I don't know why I'm doing them upwards, but I am. So once I start emotionally eating, I find it very hard to stop. Could carry on all day or for several days. So what would be your advice to break the cycle? So lots of different tools that we've talked about. So creating that toolkit, and I think this is a mixture as well of like not hitting the screw it button. If you have an emotional eating episode, remind yourself that that's a very normal human physiological response to not feeling very good and doing anything you can to avoid uncomfortable emotions, because we do whatever we can, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's food. We do not want to sit with those emotions, so we do what we can. And for most people it's food, because food isn't quite as damaging as alcohol and drugs. So food is like the safety. And so breaking that cycle, I think I've spoken about quite a few times, like trip yourself up and interrupt. So put your 10 minutes timer on, do something different. Get your journal out or a piece of pen and paper and write what you're thinking and feeling in that moment. Because if you're someone and you're from that question, you're probably a bit of an all or nothing person. Once you've started, you keep continuing because you're telling yourself, I've ruined it, and it perpetuates that cycle. So rather than just being like, it's okay, like an emotional eating episode is not a problem, but one that follows and follows after and follows after and follows after, that's where it becomes a problem, because that's where you will gain weight and that's where you will feel useless because you're not doing anything different.
And so, just kind of on that topic as well, it's that start Monday mentality, you know, and that's where people kind of carry it on and go, oh, well, it's Friday, I might as well just do what I want Saturday, Sunday, I'll start again Monday. And randomly, whenever I think about dieting, it's always a Thursday or a Friday. And I will start a diet. Like the last diet I started on a Friday. And people are like, that's a bit weird. It's like, I guess coming from a bars and restaurant background, I don't understand what a weekend is. Like, I don't know one. Like, I've never got into that cycle from being 17, working, you know, constantly in random shifts and random times. So I don't have that weekend mentality as such. But I think people that do have that, oh, I want to start again on Monday, when they go into the emotional eating, they struggle to break the cycle because they're not getting to a Monday fast enough.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You know, it's okay, I'll just carry on and start again Monday, or I do my check-ins on a Sunday and a Monday, so I'll just do it when I check in, and I'll just say, oh, I'll start again. And it's about breaking that thought process as well, you know, that it's not start again Monday, it's start again on a Tuesday if you want, it's fine.
Yeah, and the difference between starting again, it doesn't have to be this clean slate and right, everything must be perfect again. It's not. It's like, come Monday, if you feel sluggish after an overindulgent weekend, then just get out of some steps and drink some more water. Like, just keep it really simple. Like, it's just avoiding that all or nothing, all in or all out, because that's where the problems start. Question: how do I stop my kids having the same emotional eating patterns as me? And I don't really know when mine started. So I would say for this one, you can use working with the children as a positive here. So when you are emotional, like, teach them what they can do in those, you know, if they're having a difficult day, then it's like, what do we do when we have, you know, when we feel these feelings? Or what do we do when we've had a bit of a cry? We go for a walk, or we put the music on and we dance. And so that's how you sort of teach them that their coping mechanism, or the way that you make yourself feel better, is not by eating a big bar of chocolate, it's by doing an activity, or it's like, let's get the colouring books out. This is going to make us feel better. So I would say that there's lots of activities that we can do with children that would show them that food isn't the only way to deal with difficult emotions.
And I think, like, probably grandparents are probably gonna go, oh, you fell over, have a biscuit, you know, and, you know, have some sweets. And I think it's an age-old thing from years and years ago. You know, people just used, because obviously food wasn't as, you know, widely available as it is now, a biscuit, some chocolate was a bit of a treat. And again, it was used as that dopamine to make someone feel better after they've been sad. Whereas obviously now it's misused and abused in the sense that, you know, kids get sweets and chocolate every day. It's not a one-off occurrence to kind of, you know, oh, you've fallen over, or have an ice cream or something, you know, it's there all the time. So yeah, like you say, I love that of, you know, let's have a dance, let's change the mood around, let's go for a walk, let's get the dopamine from that energy that you're giving out. You know, going for a walk can give you a similar dopamine hit, you know, or like say dancing around your room. Everyone loves music, kids love music, you know, have a track that they love that you can just go, right, okay, it's the dance track, come on, you know,
put this on now.
Yeah, let's get everyone jumping around. And they've forgotten in 10 minutes what they were upset about, you know, and then like you say, they learn that pattern of behavior. Like, they're really sad, what do I do? put some loud music on. I do the same in the car. You know, if I've had a really bad day at work, I'll put like a dance playlist on and like turn the volume up loud and have a sing in the car to myself, you know, and that kind of changes your mood around quite quickly.
It does, but I would also say that kids will learn by imitation. And so if they see someone coming in and saying, oh God, I've had such a terrible day, and straight away going for some chocolate, or pour me a glass of wine, I'm like stressed to the eyeballs, they'll just learn from that, and they'll see you doing it. So you know, sometimes I say to people, like, if you can't do it for yourself, do it for the people that you care about. And so there's one thing kind of like reaching for wine when you get in from work, but there's another thing that like getting on the scales all the time and talking about your body all the time and being really critical about your choices and this food's good and this food's bad. So there's lots of things that we can change in terms of language and our actions to not pass things on like a disordered relationship with food to our children. But that's probably another conversation for another day. The first question I think I've probably answered in with the tools and techniques. Retraining your mind, it's just doing the different things, changing that behavior gradually.
Yeah. And I think they put a valid point in there, like, you know, during your period, during your menstrual cycle, it can be hard. And, you know, I encourage all my clients to track the cycle, to track the mood, track the feelings, you know, and understand that sometimes it's slightly out of your control when your hormones are, you know, all over the place. But again, it's just, like you say, trying to have a different coping mechanism, or, you know, using the strategies that you've explained today to then obviously help you with that as well.
Or saying to yourself, when I'm coming up to menstruation and I generally feel hungrier, that's when I'm going to go easy on myself, and I am going to allow myself to have more chocolate, because that's a decision I'm going to make. So for 4 weeks, so for 3 weeks of the month, I'm going to like do my best to stick to my healthy habits, and then for that week, or maybe half that week, I am going to loosen the reins. And this might make my fat loss journey slightly longer, but actually it's going to be a far nicer journey if I know that for those few days I can just go a bit kinder to myself, because I'm probably going to be hungry, feeling like crap, and wanting to shout at everybody. So if I want chocolate, I'm going to have it.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say, you know, 3 weeks worth of progress is better than trying to get 4 and then completely ruin it and doubling your calories every single day because you tried to be restrictive and then you've not. And I always teach clients, you know, you're burning an extra few calories anyway. That's where the hunger comes from predominantly. So add an extra 300 calories in per day. It's probably not really going to make much difference. You can have a big chocolate bar, maybe not a family size one, but, you know, you can have a decent size for 300 calories, or even if you do go for the 500 calorie one, you know, are you really going to want to do that 7 days of the week unless it's a problem already? Probably not. So adding an extra couple of 100 calories in that week 4 is going to be massively beneficial than you trying to resist it and then failing and then ruining, like, or you feeling like you've ruined everything. Whereas if you allow yourself that bit of food when you know it's that time, because you're tracking, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm on day 23. I understand why I've kind of got there. Then, you know, it's sort of an allowance. And like you say, as I said before, 3 weeks of progress is better than trying to go for 4 and then ruining it even more than you wanted to.
Exactly. Sorry, I was just taking a quick picture. Right. Well, hopefully that was helpful. I'm aware that was just a lot of me just talking at everybody. So hopefully it was useful.
Saying thank you so much. This has been so useful. Lots to work on now.
Good.
But that's it. Like a lot of clients go, oh, I've got loads to do. Pick one.
Yes.
One thing you're gonna do. Don't pick 6 and go. No. Yes, write the 6 things down and go, right, these are the 6 that I think I need to work on. But pick one, just one thing, even if it's just writing down what chocolate you're eating every day, you know, and then comparing it to the next week, like you said. And again, is that all or nothing? They're like, oh, I've got all these great ideas, let's do it all. And, you know, in my business, you know, I'm guilty of that. I've been trying to do 4 things today at the same time. And it's like, no, you just got to pick one, do that, see how you get on with that. And then obviously, you know, improve over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right, well, thank you very much for having me.
No, that was absolutely amazing. So if anyone wants to find you, where can they find you? Instagram, website, Facebook?
So DMJ Coaching Donna Marie Jackson coaching, so website dmjcoaching.com, and then on Instagram or Facebook DMJ Coaching. Nice and simple.
Yeah, that has been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. If any clients are watching this back and have got any questions, just drop them on the live stream and I will send them over to Donna. But yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good rest of your evening.